Hello everyone, I am Xerix Lord Sentinel, and welcome to the long overdue Part 2 of Making an Island. In Part 1 we carved out the island and its base and attached them. Now it's time to paint and add details. We'll start out with a dark base coat, since unless the island is made of rock salt we don't want it to be this weird pink color. I have some paint already mixed and ready in my paint tray, a mixture of brown and black. The idea is to start dark and gradually go lighter. Because I want the dark color to get into all the cracks and crevices in the cliffs, I'm starting off quite heavy with the paint. I'll now check to make sure that I've covered as much of the cliffside as possible. Sometimes it is difficult to get into the smaller spaces. In those instances, I often use the stabbing method with the brush to get the paint into the desired area. The final part of the base coat is the top of the island and the hillside. Because the hillside is much smoother than the cliffs, I can get more paint out of the brush than I could on the cliffs. I try not to get paint on the base, since the base will most likely warp if it gets too wet. The next step is to apply glue and add the sand to create the beach. To do that, however, we will need to wait for the paint to dry, so we'll set this aside and come back to it in a little bit. The paint is now all dry, so we'll add the sand next. To do that, I'll use regular white glue and a brush I don't mind destroying, and I'll use it to spread the glue around. I'm trying to make sure that I spread the glue out so the sand will have a good coverage. I'm not watering the glue down, since the base will warp and not sit flat if it gets too wet. All the beach areas are covered, so now we add the sand. I spoon it onto the island, trying to get as much on it as possible. Once I am satisfied, I'll tap off the excess and set the island aside for it to dry. Once it is dry, I'll apply a sealing layer of glue with a small sprayer, and then I'll paint the sand. I left the island overnight to dry to make sure the sand stuck. If I rub my fingers across the sand like so, I'll take some of it with me. So what I'll do next is spray a sealing layer of glue on the island. I don't want to spray too much since I don't want the base of the island to warp, but I also want the sand to be locked in and sealed, which will make painting it easier. Now that that's done, we set it aside to dry. So far, I've been using mostly earth tones, browns, light browns, and so forth. However, I'm now going to use more black tones. I don't need much paint since the island is small, and we're not applying huge amounts. Using light strokes, I apply the paint to the island, trying not to get it into the cracks so the cliffs will look natural. I don't mind at this point if some paint winds up on the sand, since I'll be going over that with a light brown layer of paint later. I'm not painting the hillside, since as the last step I'll be applying glue and some grass material there. Everything is dry now. Time for the third and final layer of paint on the cliffs. I add more white to the gray I had mixed up earlier to get an even lighter shade of gray. Once again, using light strokes, I apply it to just the tops of the cliff surfaces. With that light of a coat, the paint should dry quickly, so I won't have to wait too long to paint the sand. To paint the sand, I'll need a light brown color, which I will get by mixing some white paint with my brown paint. I'll be mixing the paints in my paint tray, in the same spot I've used for some other islands. I'll start with the brown and then add the white on top to make a lighter brown color. There is some surface area on this island, so I will need a bit of paint, but not as much as for some of the larger islands I've made. Since the base does not slant down evenly in all places, I have to make sure I paint the sides where this happens, so that the white of the base does not show through. That I'm getting some of the brown on the cliffs does not bother me, since to me that seems like a natural occurrence. With the sand painted, it is time for the final step. Using a different brush, I'll apply glue to the hillside, so that the grass material can be applied. Since this will be a bit messy, I put the island into a separate tray and sprinkle the grass on. This grass is painted pencil shavings, which I've not used much before. knock off as much excess as I feel comfortable with. Some of the grass has gotten caught in the wet paint, which does not bother me much, since the beaches can have beach plants that grow in the sand. Once everything has dried, the island will be perfect for a game of Pirates. Tutorial Island, as I'm calling it, will be a part of the upcoming Century of Economy 2019, the annual game that I play in the summer to determine the best faction in the game. If you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.